In the Middle Ages, daily life was shaped by practices and customs that reflect both the technological limitations and social beliefs of the time. Among the most notable aspects was the challenge of maintaining hygiene. In a world where clean water was a luxury, people had to navigate through multiple difficulties when it came to personal cleanliness, and their habits were deeply influenced by both necessity and the limited understanding of health at the time. One of the most common solutions to the lack of water and sanitation was communal bathing, a practice widely adopted across many regions, particularly in larger cities. Public bathhouses served not only as places for washing the body, but also as spaces for socializing. These bathhouses were typically supplied by natural springs or rivers and featured large pools where multiple people could bathe together. However, this communal use of water posed significant risks. Poor hygiene practices made it easy for infectious diseases, such as the plague, to spread. With the frequent lack of personal space and privacy, shared public baths were far from hygienic by modern standards, but they were an essential feature of medieval life. In private households, bathing was much rarer and more rudimentary. Water had to be manually heated, a labor-intensive task requiring time and effort. Once heated, it was poured into a wooden tub, which was reused by each family member in order of status or age. The head of the family would bathe first, followed by the other members, down to the youngest children. Since the same water was used repeatedly, by the time it was the turn of the last person, it was often heavily soiled with dirt, which could lead to health problems. Despite this, personal hygiene was not considered a daily necessity. Rather, it was an occasional task, more of a ritual than a routine. In regions where water was especially difficult to access or transport, the idea of cleanliness was often secondary to the need for survival, and people made do with what little they had. In the absence of proper sanitary systems, people found other ways to deal with the unpleasant reality of urban living, where streets were narrow, overcrowded, and often filthy. One of the most telling practices of this era was the use of chamber pots, a common fixture in medieval homes. These simple containers, typically kept under the bed or in a discreet corner of the room, were used by family members for their daily physiological needs. When the pots were full, their contents had to be disposed of, often in the most straightforward manner, by throwing the waste directly out of the window into the street. It was common for people to announce their action with a warning cry of "Gardes l'eau," to avoid an unfortunate encounter with unsuspecting passers-by. However, not everyone took heed of these warnings, and those unlucky enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time would often find their clothes or shoes splattered with the contents of the chamber pot. This practice, though unpleasant, was a normal part of everyday life in medieval cities. The streets quickly became a mix of excrement, food scraps, animal waste, and mud, which turned urban areas into breeding grounds for disease. Even larger cities, with their attempts to regulate this practice, found it nearly impossible to enforce proper sanitation, leading to the continuous pollution of the environment and an ever-present risk of disease outbreaks. Amidst the unsanitary conditions of the time, the bridal bouquet emerged as both a practical and symbolic tradition. The bouquet was more than just an aesthetic accessory for brides. It played a key role in masking unpleasant odors in an era where poor hygiene was widespread. The streets were often filled with the smells of waste, and indoor spaces too were often stifling with a lack of ventilation and cleanliness. The bouquet, usually made up of strongly scented flowers and herbs such as rosemary, lavender, thyme, mint, and roses, served as a freshening agent, creating a more pleasant atmosphere for the bride and her guests. Each flower was carefully chosen not only for its fragrance, but also for its symbolic significance. Lavender, for example, was believed to bring calmness and freshness, while rosemary was seen as protective and energizing. The intense aromas of these flowers not only offered a reprieve from the less than pleasant surroundings, but also provided an emotional boost, offering the bride and guests comfort in a world that often felt harsh. The bridal bouquet also had a deeper symbolic meaning. Beyond its olfactory function, it represented purity, fertility, and the spiritual significance of marriage. In this way, it was not just a personal accessory for the bride, but a symbol of the future she hoped to create, one that was filled with joy, peace, and the hope for a prosperous life ahead. The bouquet was held close to the bride's body, allowing its fragrance to envelop her and set the tone for the ceremony. It was believed that the flower's pleasant aromas would help to ease any nervousness or tension on the wedding day, providing a sense of tranquility in the midst of what was often a chaotic world. The bouquet thus became a key element of the wedding ritual, intertwining the practical need to mask unpleasant smells with a deeper cultural and spiritual symbolism. Despite the more superficial role the bouquet plays in modern weddings, its origins are deeply rooted in the sanitary practices and social beliefs of the Middle Ages. The medieval bride was not simply carrying flowers for decoration. She was carrying a necessity that reflected the challenges of living in an era without modern hygiene practices. The same can be said of the communal bathhouses, which served as essential spaces in a time when access to clean water was limited and hygiene practices were often inadequate. As society evolved and technology improved, so did the ways in which people maintained their personal cleanliness. But these traditions remain a testament to the resourcefulness and resilience of those who lived in an era defined by hardship and scarcity. This shift away from communal bathing and rudimentary sanitation practices also mirrored changes in the social landscape. With the growing influence of the church, which discouraged the use of public bathhouses due to their association with immorality, bathing became less frequent. The church promoted the idea of purification through spiritual means rather than physical cleanliness, leading to a decline in the communal use of bathhouses and an increase in personal hygiene practices at home. Even so, perfumes and aromatic herbs continued to play a significant role in maintaining cleanliness and masking the odors of the time. The use of fragrant flowers, oils, and perfumes became a luxury for the upper classes, who had access to more refined methods of personal care. For the masses, however, the traditions of throwing chamber pots out the window and attending communal baths remained firmly entrenched in daily life. In conclusion, the Middle Ages were marked by practices that reflected the unique challenges of the time. The absence of modern sewage systems and clean water meant that people had to adapt to their surroundings, finding practical solutions to maintain some level of hygiene amidst a world of filth and disease. Whether it was the communal bathhouses, the symbolic bridal bouquet, or the humble chamber pot, each custom served as a reflection of the era's limited resources and the deep connection between hygiene, health, and culture. These practices not only defined daily life in the Middle Ages, but also left a lasting imprint on the rituals and traditions we continue to observe today, reminding us of the ingenuity and resilience of those who lived in a time of great adversity.